goes on all day while they're hiking. This owl follows them. The kids loved it, and Ben was pretty unnerved.
Well, I sure would
so
be.
That night, so that night, he says, pick a book. I'll be upstairs. I'll read you a bedtime story. They were little at the time. And they grab a book, and he goes upstairs, and he reads to them while they're in bed. And the book is a book called Say Boo. You can look this up on Amazon, Say Boo. And it's about a little ghost, and the ghost has lost its ability to scare people, right? So you can imagine that the writer, the old cartoon book and stuff, and the writer or the owl goes up to a cow, and instead of being able to say boo, he says moo. And it goes on and on like that. But the ghost wants to scare the owl. And instead of saying boo, it says who. And the ghost is named Ben. And in the story, Ben is sitting there on the bed reading to his kids, and he says, of the owl, I'm blending everything now, of the ghost, he says, and then Ben looked up into a tall pine tree and saw an owl. He read that aloud. The next thing that happens, his dog starts barking like crazy downstairs. He runs downstairs and opens the door. There's nothing out there. And his eyes are drawn upward, and he sees up in a large pine tree, he sees an owl. The last words he spoke before seeing that owl were, and then Ben looked up into a large pine tree and saw an owl.
Wow.
Now, there's no UFOs in this story, but this is exactly the kind of thing that I've been uncovering. And when talking with Ben, this is in the book, and we went back and forth, and I had him recheck the essay that I had written, the little short paragraphs that I had written, where I told essentially the story I'm telling right now. And he said, this is interesting, rereading this. These are the same stories. This is my story. Like, I was looking for my voice, and I told my kids my story. I was looking for my voice, and that's the story of Ben the owl. Ben the ghost. Ben the ghost was looking for his voice. He had lost his ability to sort of tell his own truth. He couldn't say boo. And he was like, this is me. This is my story. This was meant for me, which I thought was remarkable. And that's something else that comes up, that these stories can feel remarkably personal, as if they are orchestrated for the individual.
Well, not to sound strange here, Mike, but maybe somebody at one point was abducted, by the Greys or whatever, right? And maybe they were into owls, or maybe they just saw an owl before they were abducted. That was clearly in their mind. And maybe then at that point, when they were abducted and basically their dreams and their thoughts were downloaded, they figured, owls, that associates with humans.
Well, I would go a few steps further and say that these events, and this is the premise of the books, and I argue this through the stories. So in all of the world's mythologies, the owl stands as a powerful symbol, a powerful totem. Minerva, the goddess of wisdom, and Athena, the Greek counterpart, both had a companion owl. There's owls throughout mythology. There's owl folklore. There's owl, ancient carvings of owls, ancient symbolic owls that are all over Egypt, that are all over Babylonia, that are all over this desert Southwest. My sense is that the experiences I'm documenting present day, the story Ben just had, that people throughout the ages have been having similar stories. Does that mean that people throughout the ages have been abducted? Maybe, and quite probably. So my premise is that this mythology arose out of real life experiences. Now, I also have been collecting stories about owls and death. I have been collecting stories about owls and shamanic initiation. I've also collected a lot of stories about people who take mushrooms and see owls. Now, to me, like some people have actually written on like Amazon, like people take drugs and he listens to their stories, and I'm like, yes. And people have a psychedelic experience. They see an owl symbolically. I want to understand that. Why does the owl show up? People have a UFO experience. They see an owl literally. Why does the owl show up? So I'm wrestling with these ideas. I don't have great answers, but I dance around what it may or may not mean. And what I've come up with, the best answer is that the owl is an archetype. Like we have within the term archetype is one of those. It's like the graduate student at the philosophy university getting their degree would wrestle with how to define archetype, but it implies that there's a buried knowledge that we all share deep within us. We all know what an owl is on an archetypal level. We know, like for instance, you watch Star Wars. Luke Skywalker is a hero. It's an archetypal hero. You watch the movie and he's flying his little spaceship and getting in lightsaber fights and stuff, but he has the hero's journey that so many mythos, the mythos of mankind has generated. And I would say the same thing about an owl, right? So you see an owl in a tree branch in the forest, no big deal. You see an owl at a funeral, that's something else.
Yeah. Now you mentioned owls and death. Why don't you get into that? Because now you got my curiosity up.
This gets my curiosity too. So owls and so the very first owl. So I knew there was an owl and death correlation, right? In the Southwest, people are very, the natives, the plains tribes of the Southwest, the desert tribes, have a very dark mythology and folklore around owls. Owls are bad medicine. Less so other places in the Northeast. The natives don't have such a dark view of the owls, but in other places they do, in Africa, parts of Africa and parts of the Middle East. But even in Ireland and England, I mean, there's Shakespearean plays. Like right before Julius Caesar was stabbed, they heard an owl hooting. So, and that's right in the play. Now,
but when I was a little kid, I will say this: my grandmother, she was from, originally from the Germany area, depending on what, how the territory kept moving back and forth in her time frame, or, her grandfather's, time frame. But she always used to tell me when you hear an owl, that meant somebody died.
That people still say that, and I have found, here's what I found. I found very few examples of that. What I found is when someone dies, an owl will show up afterwards. I have a lot of stories where owls. So a woman is grieving that her mother has died. Her mother just recently died. The story is covered in the book. There's 3 separate stories that are all tied in together, but I'll just tell this one. And she has no association with UFOs, as far as I know, this woman. Her mother dies. She's on a phone call that night. She says, "I'm grieving. I can't take this anymore. I miss my mom. It's terrible. I'm sad. I'm grieving. I need some way to get beyond this." And her friend on the other end of the phone says, "Just hold tight. A sign will come." The next morning, she gets up. She goes into her garage. She's living in Florida. The whole garage, it's her husband's garage, basically, right? So everything in the garage is her husband's. She's allowed one shelf. She moves a bucket on that shelf, which is also death imagery, a bucket, kicking the bucket. She moves a bucket on the shelf, and behind the bucket is this little owl. And she's shocked. She's never seen an owl before, and here's this little owl. She has pictures of it, 6-inch tall screech owl. They're cute. And she's taking pictures of it, and she gets on the phone, and she calls her cousin. And, because she'd been talking to her cousin about her mom dying, and her cousin's name is Lon, and she goes, "Lonnie, it's Mom. Mom's right here. I'm in the garage with Mom." She takes pictures of the owls and texts them to Lonnie. Now, she talks to the owl as if it's her dead mother. I have this over and over and over and over in my research where people will see an owl during the grieving process, talk to it like their parent. So she talks for a long time. This is actually Thanksgiving Day. She goes to a Thanksgiving party, comes back, the owl's still in the garage. Garage door's been open. She goes up to the owl and she said, Mom, I got it. I got the message. You can go. Thank you. Thank you so much thank you. It means so much that you came and visited, but now you can go. And the owl flies off and she never sees it again. And she's moves beyond her grieving. I have that story in all those, including moving beyond the grieving, over and over and over. I have another story of a woman. She's meditating. She sits down to meditate. It's their mother's birthday. Her mother's been dead for a year. It's her mother's birthday. She's still grieving. She still misses her mom. She sits in her living room, meditates for a little while. The intention of her meditation is to get over the grieving, to move beyond the grieving. Very calm. At the end of it, she opens her eyes. The way she's sitting in the living room, on the living room floor, she has this direct view of the kitchen window. And out the kitchen window is an owl. Now, she lives in my town. She's a neighbor of mine. She knows I do this owl stuff. She goes and takes a picture of it. And she texts me. I'm sitting on the couch. It's morning time. I'm drinking coffee. I'm sitting on the couch. I'm looking at email and stuff like that. And she says, is this owl sick? Can you tell if there's anything wrong with this owl? And I'm looking at this picture. It's a barred owl. It's this nice, handsome owl. And I'm like, how am I supposed to know if it's sick? I'm like, I don't know. It looks fine to me. What's up? She said, well, and she tells the story I just told. And I'm like, what? Wait a minute. You were meditating on grieving for your mother? And it's like, she's like, what do I do? And I was like, you open that window and you talk to that owl. And she did. And she talked to it for about a half hour.
Now, did you ever ask her if she ever saw any UFOs in her life or anything?
I did.
What did she come up with?
Oh, I ask everyone. Yeah.
Yeah. Out of curiosity, did she ever see one, or she was one of?
No, my recollection off the top of my head is no.
Okay.
She didn't. So so these aren't mutually exclusive, right? So here's UFOs, synchronicities. This is where owls show up. UFOs, synchronicities, shamanic initiation, death, mushrooms. Now these are all transformative experiences, right? So you can have a powerful synchronicity that can change your life. You can have a powerful UFO experience that can change your life. You could go through shamanic initiation, it'll change your life. Death, that's the ultimate transformation right there, right? And you can have a psychedelic vision on drugs, on mushrooms, and it can change your life. Now, so what I'm saying, what I argue, I understand that I'm going way out on a limb here, and this is just speculation, is that the owl would be the totem of the transformational experience.
Well, it sounds like it possibly could be. There's some type of connection.
We'll never know. We could. Yes, it's a very tidy way of looking at it, and yes, but that's so. I'm not locked into UFOs, and I'm not locked into owls. I have heard stories of hummingbirds and hawks and deer and things like that, where they have this powerful, in the context of these things, can be very powerful. So,
well, in your case, though, seriously, if you saw grays out of your bedroom window, and
yeah, that's a pretty good one. I mean,
that would.
But I'll tell you that. Yeah, I can't. I got a hard time, denying that one.
Yeah, it tells me it has to be something to do with a connection, because evidently you were abducted. You don't remember what happened other than you saw them coming, and then you went to sleep as they instructed you to do. That's where I hear it a lot from people that have been abducted. Most of them don't remember anything other than the first initial encounter, and from that point on, they don't remember anything. That's it.
Yeah. And these aliens, the typical grays, were walking towards the house. They were backlit by a bright light. Now here, let me just we got the time. I'll tell you. So that event felt like I was in a distorted reality. It felt like everything was weirdly quiet. Everything was hyper vivid. Now, this is stuff that shows up in UFO reports. People get abducted, like people who need glasses to see. They get abducted. They don't have their glasses, but they can see fine. right? They're on board the craft. They're like, crap, I forgot my glasses. They're on the bedside table. But they see fine.